A little girl with long hair. In the heart of a bustling city, there was a quiet lane named Whispering Willows. People often said that the lane was magical, and if you listened closely, you could hear the willow trees whispering stories of old. In one of the houses on this lane lived Amelia, a little girl with the longest hair anyone had ever seen. It was said that her hair was as long as the lane itself. The color of a raven's wing, her hair shone in the sunlight and flowed like a river. Every morning, Amelia would sit on her balcony, brushing her hair. Birds would often perch on her shoulder, mistaking her hair for a nest. Children from the neighborhood would stop by, hoping to hear stories about her magical hair. My grandmother once told me that every strand of my hair holds a story from the past, Amelia would begin. The children would sit, wide-eyed, listening to tales of pirates, princesses, and faraway lands. Each story was more fantastic than the last. However, having such long hair wasn't always easy. It would get stuck indoors, trap leaves and twigs, and sometimes kids would accidentally step on it. But Amelia didn't mind. She believed that her hair was special and that it connected her to a world of stories. One day, a renowned hairstylist named Monsieur Lecoul came to town. He heard about Amelia's extraordinary hair and wanted to give her a new hairstyle. With a trim and some curls, you could be a star, he exclaimed. The whole town gathered to see Amelia's transformation. But as Monsieur Lecoul was about to make the first snip, Amelia stopped him. My hair is not just hair. It's a part of who I am, filled with stories and memories. I can't let it be cut. Monsieur Lecoul, understanding the importance of Amelia's hair to her, decided not to cut it. Instead, he styled it in a way that showcased its beauty while still preserving its length. The town cheered, and Amelia's hair became even more legendary. People from all over came to see the girl with the magical, long hair and to hear the enchanting tales it held. And so, in Whispering Willows Lane, Amelia continued to live, her hair flowing behind her like a beautiful, storytelling river. Mysterious story of Eleanor. In the town of Averville, Eleanor was somewhat of a legend. With deep blue eyes that seemed to hide the universe's secrets and a knack for disappearing when you least expected it, she was a puzzle no one could solve. Many stories floated around about Eleanor. Some said she was an old witch, using spells to stay young. Others believed she was a time traveler, bouncing between different eras. But most of Averville's residents simply believed she was eccentric, with an extraordinary talent for storytelling. Every Friday, at the town's library, Eleanor held a story hour. People, especially children, would gather around her as she spun tales of mystical creatures, distant galaxies, and hidden treasures. But her most captivating stories were the ones she claimed to be true tales from her life. One day, she narrated the story of a midnight sun, a place where it was never dark. She described vividly how she danced under the bright stars at what should have been midnight, with creatures that glowed in the dark. Another time, she told the children about a city floating in the clouds, where people flew with wings of feathers. Lucas, a curious 12-year-old, was her biggest fan. One day, he mustered up the courage to ask, "Eleanor, are these stories real? Have you really been to all these places?" Eleanor smiled, her blue eyes twinkling mysteriously. "What do you think, Lucas?" "I want to believe they're real," he said, looking hopeful. Eleanor leaned in and whispered, "Then they are as real as you and me." One rainy afternoon, Lucas decided to visit Eleanor's home, a beautiful cottage at the edge of Avaville, surrounded by wildflowers. He wanted to see if he could find any clues about her mysterious past. But when he arrived, the door was slightly ajar, and the house seemed to be empty. On the table, he found an old journal with the name Eleanor on it. Flipping through it, Lucas found sketches of fantastical creatures, maps of unknown lands, and diary entries that dated back hundreds of years. Each entry was a story she had told at the library. The last page held a fresh note, "Dear Lucas, you've always been curious. Now you hold my world in your hands. Take care of my stories. Love, Eleanor." Lucas left the house, the journal clutched tightly in his hands. He realized Eleanor's tales might have been more than just stories. And though Avaville never saw Eleanor again, her legacy lived on through Lucas, who continued the tradition of Story Hour, ensuring Eleanor's adventures would never be forgotten. Jonathan in the jungle. Jonathan's life had always revolved around the bustling city, the sounds of traffic, and the cold touch of concrete. So, when he was selected by his university for a research expedition in the Amazon rainforest, it felt like being thrown into a different world. The first day was overwhelming. The thick canopy of trees made the air heavy and moist, and the sounds were like nothing he'd ever heard. Everywhere he looked, life burst forth in a chaotic yet harmonious dance. Brightly colored birds flew overhead, and unknown creatures rustled in the underbrush. His guide, Rosa, was a local who had grown up amidst the trees and rivers of the jungle. With her guidance, Jonathan learned not just about the different species they were studying, but also about the delicate balance of life in the rainforest. One evening, as they were setting up camp, Rosa shared stories of her ancestors, who believed in spirits that protected the jungle. She told him of the guardian of the trees, a spirit that would appear in the form of a majestic jaguar. Late that night, Jonathan was awakened by a strange sound. Curiosity piqued, he decided to investigate. As he ventured deeper into the jungle, he came face to face with a massive jaguar, its eyes reflecting the moonlight. Remembering Rosa's stories, he froze, wondering if this was the guardian spirit. To his surprise, the jaguar simply gazed at him for a moment, then turned and walked away, disappearing into the night. The next day, Jonathan shared his encounter with Rosa. She smiled, "You met our guardian. It's rare for him to show himself. He must have seen something special in you." The weeks flew by, and as Jonathan's time in the jungle came to an end, he felt a profound connection to this place. The experience had changed him in ways he couldn't explain. The once overwhelming jungle now felt like home. When he returned to the city, Jonathan wasn't the same. He became an advocate for rainforest conservation, sharing his experiences and the importance of preserving such magical places. With Rosa's stories and the memory of the guardian in his heart, he worked tirelessly to bridge the gap between the urban world and the mysteries of the jungle. Dr. Goodness. Dr. Anne Goodness was not just known for her impeccable medical skills but also for her kind heart and tireless dedication to her community. She worked in a small town called Waverley, where almost everyone knew everyone else, and didn't have a fancy clinic. Instead, she turned her old family home into a community medical center, where anyone could come, whether they could afford to pay or not. Most days, her waiting room was filled with the chatter of families, kids playing, and sometimes, the comforting aroma of freshly baked cookies. One winter morning, Mr. Thompson, the local school principal, came in with a young boy named Leo, who had a persistent cough. Anne recognized him immediately. Leo was in the foster system and had moved from one house to another. She had treated him a couple of times before for minor injuries. While examining Leo, Anne found out that he had pneumonia. It was essential for him to get proper rest and medication, but given his unstable home situation, Anne was concerned. Without a second thought, Anne decided to take Leo in during his recovery. She transformed her guest room into a warm and cozy space for the boy. The town chipped in too, with neighbors bringing in homemade soup, books, and toys. As days turned into weeks, Leo's health improved, and so did his spirit. He began to smile more and even started assisting and around the clinic, running little errands or just sitting by the patients, offering them comfort with his presence. The story of Dr. Goodness and her young helper spread throughout Waverley, inspiring many to do their bit for the community. Mrs. Green, the librarian, started a reading program for kids. Mr. Rodriguez, the baker, began delivering bread to the elderly. The entire town was slowly transforming, all thanks to the ripple effect of Anne's kindness. One day, a couple from a neighboring town visited the clinic. They had heard about Leo and wanted to adopt him. After ensuring it was a good match, Leo found a forever home. But he made sure to visit Anne every week, and the bond between the doctor and the boy remained unbreakable. Years later, Leo went to medical school and returned to Waverley to work alongside Dr. Goodness. The once small clinic expanded, but its essence remained the same, a place of healing, not just for the body but for the soul. The legacy of Dr. Anne Goodness went beyond medicine. She showed an entire town that kindness, compassion, and community could heal the world. And Waverley, with its big-hearted inhabitants, stood as a testament to her name and her mission.